We begin the current Daf Masechtas Eruvin Daf Mem Zayin. We begin 4 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where we continue the discussion from the previous Daf regarding if isnu lahani klali or lesnu lahani klali. Shiur's correspondent to B'Kalzik and Yecheskel to any time Daf Hachaim. Some of the things we're going to speak about today's Daf are, we had mentioned certain klalim, certain general rules. If you have machlekes, Rabbi Yisrael and Yehuda, and different Tanoim, Rabbi Misharshi had said lesnu lahani klali, we don't hold the general rules, and the Gemara continues with additional proofs for Rabbi Misharshi. This we're going to be discussing today's daf. If the object's owned by a non-Jew, whether they acquire a Tchum Shabbos, and the Gemara is going to make that contingent on the machlekes that we have regarding Chavtzei Hefka that we mentioned in the previous daf, if an ownerless object acquires a Tchum or not. So in the key terms, the concept we're going to discuss is what's called Beis HaPras. Beis HaPras, or rabbinic tumah, which there was a grave somewhere there in that field. It was plowed over. We don't know where exactly the pieces of the bones are. That area is rabbinically tummy. The concept of halacha kremeir b'gzeireis, the halacha follows like Remeir regarding his rabbinic decrees, and therefore generally we would follow him in those cases. So we begin the current daf. We had said, as we said, we had guidelines how to paskin when you have machlekes of a certain tanoim, who the halacha is going to be like. Now Rashash had said, less on the klali, we don't hold these rules. And the Gemara is attempting to bring a raya. Where do you see this concept that you don't follow, that this is the absolute rule that you're going to follow? Let's say Rabbi Yisi versus whoever he disagrees with. Or in your Meir Yehuda, who do you rule like? So the Gemara tried attempting to bring a raya, and the Gemara continues with similar types of proofs and rejecting with the same type of rejection. The Gemara says, okay, Elamahad it's not. So rather the proof could be from a Mishnah later on, Daf Pevav Menaf. Again, a lot of these are going to be cases, you're going to have to get into the concepts, but the main idea is going to be, who's the halacha like? And you see, we're ruling not like the klal, and that's going to be the right to Rabbi Misharshi. The Mishnah says like this, Hamanich is basic, someone leaves his house. We'll see this later on, this Masechtas on the Pevav, and he goes to spend Shabbos in another city. Says the first Tana, whether it's a Jew or a non-Jew, whoever it is that's the owner of this house, but he left for Shabbos, he makes it forbidden on the rest of the people in the courtyard that they cannot go out and carry out from their house to the courtyard. Why? Because this guy who owns a house here in this development, he has rights in the courtyard. So even though he's not in the city, but he's going to make it forbidden for them if he did not take part of the Eruv before he left. That's the Remeir. He didn't join in the Eruv, and although he's not here, still he has rights, and it's not one big Eruv. One guy didn't join the Eruv. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, ain't nicer. He's not going to make it forbidden because he's not here. He's not in town. So he's not going to be partaking of this chatzar, and everyone else who's here has a neighbor. The third opinion, Rabbi Yisrael, he says, well, it depends. Nachri Eiser. A non-Jew will make it forbidden because although he's not in town for Shabbos, he could come in his truck on Saturday afternoon, and therefore he's not removing the possibility of coming back on Shabbos on Saturday. Yisrael ain't Eiser. But a Jew, he's not going to make it forbidden because the moment he leaves here for Shabbos, and he's not here from Erev Shabbos, so he's already out of mind, he's not coming back for the whole Shabbos. As Rabbi Yisi explains, it's not the norm for a Jew to come back where he went away for Shabbos to come back on Shabbos, so therefore it's like as if he doesn't have a dwelling over here, this dwelling doesn't have an owner, and therefore it's not going to make it forbidden. Fourth opinion, Rabbi Shimon, he says, he says, even if the guy left his house, he went to spend Shabbos by his daughter, even if it's Ba'isa here. It's right across the street. This Tachtel is right across the street from him. He's not going to make it forbidden. Why? Already took away his intention of being home, and therefore even in the same city holds Rabbi Shimon it's going to be permitted. So we have 4 opinions. Now, this is the main point. This is Allah is Rabbi Shimon. Now it's like the last opinion of Rabbi Shimon that once someone leaves for Shabbos, he's not coming home for Shabbos. And therefore it's not going to make it a bit. And now says the Gemara now who's one of the disputants over here? It's Rabbi Yehuda. Who Rabbi Yehuda, as Rashi points out, he said that it's only if the Jew went to another city, then he's not going to make it forbidden. But if it's in the same city, on Dino, you're right across the street, right? You went away for Shabbos, but then you can make it forbidden. Now Rashi points out also actually Rabbi Yisi is also disagreeing, and Rabbi Yisi, everyone is always like Rabbi Yisi, but we're just picking one of them. Point is, you're having a machlekes Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. And Bahamid, you had said Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, one of the kalam on the previous top was machlekes Rabbi Shimon halach is Rabbi Yehuda. Wait a second, halach Rabbi Yehuda. So why are you saying halach is like Rabbi Shimon? Obviously we don't hold the kalalim. Obviously this is the bride for Rabbi Sharsha. Says the Gemara, as it's rejecting continuously the same rejection, my kusha, what's the difficulty? Here also. Where is said the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon? Of course we'll say it's like Rabbi Shimon. It's only hechid deloyed, maloyed. Now, we didn't say, then we'll say the klal that's a Yehuda, but it's not a raya to say that we don't hold up these klal. So the Gemara continues with a different raya. Rather, the raya from a Mishnah that we're having later on the paragraph of the Testament base. The Mishnah says like this: this is what we said. A pauper, someone who's on the road, he has no bread with him, he can make an erev tchumen with his feet by being there when Shabbos starts. He says, he says, yeah, we actually only have. In other words, who could acquire a shvisa, a Shabbos residence with their feet without an erev of bread? That's Ella Ami. That's only a pauper. In other words, someone that's on the road and doesn't have any bread, he's the only one that can make an erev with his legs. But actually, if he has bread, if he's home, he can't make it by just being there. He's got to have bread over there. We'll see this later on, 2 daf from now. But that's the opinion of Rameir. He disagrees. He says, no, echad, whether you're a pauper, whether a wealthy person, even if you're in your house, if you want to go yourself and just be there when Shabbos is starting to be without bread, you could acquire shvisa for you. We didn't say that there's halacha making erev with bread. That's only to make it easier for quote unquote the wealthy person. Say that he shouldn't have to go out because of the tircha of the exertion. They have to make an erev with his feet. Rather, they permitted him to send an erev with bread through his agent. But of course, if you want to, you could go ahead and make it with your legs. So that's a machlekes we have between the two different opinions between Rameir and Yehuda. Rameir says no, actually, you have to do it with bread. It's only a pauper who doesn't have bread that could do it with his feet. He says, no, everyone can do it with their feet. If anything, the bread is just a leniency, but the feet for sure could be done. Fine, that's the machlekes. We'll see this later on in this paragraph. But the point is, Masnali Rav Chia bar Ashi, he taught this Mishnah, L'Chia bar Rav, to Chia, the son of Rav, Kamei Rav. So Rav was overhearing as his son was learning with someone else. And he taught Echad Ash, Ani Be'echad Asher. Meaning he taught the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that yes, you could be Ma'ar Baragla with your feet, whether you're a wealthy person or you're a poor person. Rav said to him, Sayin Banami, conclude also when you're saying this Mishnah, say Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Wait a second, says the Gemara, Tarti Lamali. Why do you need 2 different teachings? You want to tell me that halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in general when Rameir disagrees with him. So why do you have to say over here halacha Rabbi Yehuda, but v'amrit? But you already made the klal that whenever you have machlekes Rameir Rabbi Yehuda, where it wasn't said specifically that halacha like either one, halacha is Rabbi Yehuda. So then why did Rav have to come along and say and say halacha Rabbi Yehuda? What was meant to say? Of course, we all know this already. This is the klal. Obviously, you don't hold up klalim, and never Rav had to say halacha. You have to say halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara again, my kusha, what's the difficulty? Dimma Rav less lohani klali. So the Gemara gives a different type of an answer over here. Says, you're right. If we had the klal, Rav wouldn't have to say that. But maybe Rav, he doesn't hold to the general rules. And as Rashi explained, because Rav doesn't hold of it, you're saying less nu. Rabbi Mishasha wants to prove less nu. Rabbi Yechanan is the one who had said these klalim. And halacha, if anything, follows like Rabbi Yechanan when he disagrees with Rav. So yeah, Rav obviously doesn't hold the klal. But how does that prove regarding Rabbi Yechanan? So we're back to the question, where's Rabbi Mishasha saying less on the klali? What do I mean? Rabbi Yechanan is the one that did say them, and we rule like Rabbi Yechanan, not like Rav. Say the Rav, the Gemara attempts Mahaditnan. Mishnah Masechet is Yavamas. This gets a little bit more complicated, but again, we're bringing it into the ultimate idea about who we're saying the halach is like. Mishnah says, Yavama is a woman whose husband died without any children. So the brother-in-law has a mitzvah of doing yibum or chalitza. Yibum is he marries, or chalitza is a type of divorce of yibum. So halach is loy ta'achlitz. She shouldn't have chalitza done within 3 months from her husband passed away. Now the reason for this is interesting. Reason the Gemara explains in Masechet Yavamas is because the husband just died within the last 3 months. You can't do chalitza with the last 3 months. Maybe she's pregnant. You can't really tell pregnancy until after the first trimester, after the first 3 months. Now, if she's pregnant, chalitza of a pregnant woman is not a valid chalitza. And as Rashi actually quotes from the Gemara, then Yavama says, okay, what's the big deal? So do chalitza even within 3 months, and wait till after 3 months. If you find she's pregnant, so she doesn't even need chalitza if it's a regular child. If she had a child, then she had a child. If she's not pregnant, then she doesn't need another chalitza because it turns out she really wasn't pregnant. And if it turns out that she was pregnant, but the child is an unviable child, so she'll do chalitza a second time. But what's wrong with doing chalitza within 3 months? And that brings Rashi from the Gemara over there that no, maybe it's going to be she can have a regular child. Comes out that she really never had chalitza to make her forbidden on a kohen. She really could marry a kohen because chalitza is like a grusha, can't get married to a kohen, but she really could because it really wasn't a chalitza. And then she's going to need an announcement for kahuna that really she's permitted to marry a kohen. So the Gemara says, okay, so get that announcement. someone might have been there by the chalitza, but wasn't there by the announcement that really wasn't about chalitza, and then he's going to see a chalutza married to a kohen, and then you see, look, a grusha can marry a kohen, and it's going to come into a lot of problems. So be that as it may, that's what the Mishnah says over there. Yavama cannot do chalitza, and also belitus yam. She obviously cannot do yibum within 3 months. Her husband died on the children. A week later, the brother-in-law says, okay, let's get married. No, because maybe she's pregnant, and it's going to come out that he's having relations with his brother's wife that, quote-unquote, sheyesh laban, that has children, which is a punishment of karas. And therefore, you can't do either chalitza even at shiur shlish chadashim until 3 months have passed, where then it's recognizable that she's not pregnant, and then he could do chalitza or yibum. And that's one halach regarding a yavam. Then b'chein shar kol nashim, same halach applies to all of the women that they're not with their husband anymore. Maybe the husband passed away. That maybe if she's going to get married to someone else right after her husband passed away, 2 weeks later she gets married, we're not going to know the paternity of the child. Maybe the child is a 7th-month baby from the second husband. Maybe the 9-month baby from the first husband. And you need to be able to differentiate, like the Gemara says, because you could run into problems. We don't know who the father is. Maybe the brothers are going to do yibum to the child that she's going to have, and which husband is it could be Eshes Achiv Me'imoy, not Eshes Achiv Me'achiv, right? If she's going to have a child from this when she gets married. Now the brothers might think it's really from the second husband, and they're going to do yibum, but really it's not. It's only they only share the same mother, not the same father, and you now do yibum to Eshes Achiv Me'imoy, to your brother-in-law, your brother's wife from that's only share the same mother, or you have to share the same father, and also you could run into many different problems. So if a woman's not allowed to go ahead, lo yinasu, she not get married, and lo yisarsu, she can't even get engaged. And the reason is because Rabbanan made Gzeir Rabbanan, if we let the woman get engaged within 3 months and her husband passed away, she might actually get married, which getting married, you're going to run into that problem, but we're not going to know the paternity of the child. Until you have 3 months that already passed, and says the Mishnah, Echad Besulis, whether she's a virgin, Echad Beulas, whether she already had relations, Echad Almanis, Echad Gerushes, whether she was widowed, whether she was divorced, which the Gemara there in Yavamas explains that what does it mean, Achas Shenis, meaning whether she got married to the original husband when she was a Besula, whether she got married when she was a Be'ula, and whether she got widowed or divorced from this husband, whether it's from Erison or whether she was, maybe she was only just engaged, whether she was married, doesn't make a difference. But all of them you have to wait after she gets divorced, after the death, 3 months. We make a blanket, say you got to wait 3 months. Now, and this also applies that at Echad Arusis, whether she's engaged. In other words, even though she was only engaged to her first husband, where, wait a second, she obviously could not have become pregnant, she was only engaged, still the Rabbanan making Zera that if we allow her to get married right away after she got widowed when she was just engaged, we might do it when she was also married to him. And Nechanesu is, or whether she was married, in all these cases, you gotta wait 3 months. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Yehuda, he disagrees, says no. Nesua is Yisarsu. If she was married, she's allowed to get engaged right away, but she can't get married until after 3 months, but she can get engaged right away. And the reason is because she's not going to get pregnant from the second husband, only get engaged within 3 months. And if she ends up getting a child right after 3 months, we know most definitely it's from the second, it's from the, if it's within 3 months, we know it's from the first one, because if it's from the last one, it would be only a 6-month baby, and that's not going to survive, at least in Talmudic times. So, if she was married, she can get engaged. Varusis, if she was engaged, meaning she got widowed or divorced from being engaged, then Yinasu, she's allowed to get married right away again because she wasn't pregnant from the first husband. Chutz Marusa Shabi except if she was engaged in Judea. One of the 3 lands in Eretz Yisrael was called Yehuda, and they used to seclude the bride and the groom before they got married, as the Gemara says, Ksubas David Bezim and Aleph, to get to know each other. And there, the reason why, even though they were only engaged, she cannot go ahead and get married, is Mnei Shaliba Gaspa. Because since he was accustomed to her and he recognized her and they were very close, they might have had relations, and therefore she might actually have been pregnant from being engaged in Judea. So therefore, although she was only engaged, she wouldn't be able to get married right now. That was the second opinion. A third opinion, which somewhere in the middle, Rabbi Yisrael, he says, no, Kol HaNashim Yisarsu. All women can get engaged. So he's disagreeing with the Tanna Kama, because the Tanna Kama said you can't do anything within 3 months. He's saying you could get engaged. He's also disagreeing with the second opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda allowed if the woman was widowed from engagement, she'd get married. He says no one can get married, but everyone can get engaged. Chutz is one exception, now mana from a widow. Why? A widow simply she can't get married is because she has 30 days of mourning. But if she was divorced, then she could get engaged right away. Okay, that's the three machlekes. And we said there was a story. Rabbi Lazar didn't come into the base of Medrash. Ashkil Rabasi, so he found Rabasi was standing over there. Amalei, he said, what did they say in the base of Medrash today? Amalei, he said to him, this was Rabbi he said, Halachik Rabbi Yisi. Halachik was Rabbi Yisi, which we have, he was like the middle opinion of these three opinions, that says any woman, she gets divorced, she can get engaged right away. So on that says the Gemara, no, so that's what they asked, so Machlal, so they said over here, so the inference is that from the fact that we said in the Mishnah of the Tanna Kama, that Echad Arusas V'Echad Nesuas, so the Gemara is saying, must be the Chidor Polygala, must be that who disagreed with Reb Yesi was an individual Tana's opinion. Now it's important to point out that this is obviously not like we had in the previous daf. We had said that the klal was that halacha Reb Yesi mechavei rav. So some of the girsa mechavei rav, but this is obviously at least not like we saw in the previous daf, which here the Gemara seems to be saying, and we're not by the question yet. The question is going to come soon, meaning the writer of Mashasha. We still know the discussion. But one thing is, if we say halacha Reb Yesi, obviously that the Tanna Kama was a yachid, not the chachamim. Because this time, whoever's saying this part of the Gemara holds that the halacha would not be like Rabbi Yisi mechavei rav, or only like mechavei roy. So if you say halacha like Rabbi Yisi, obviously Tanna Kama was a das yachid, and that's the Gemara in yes. But Tanya, this is what we learned in the Brisa, because we're going to see in the Brisa that the one who disagrees with Rabbi Yisi is a one Tana, not the chachamim. When you have somebody have a Tanna Kama, it's like the chacham. Where do we see this? The Brisa says the following halacha: Harisha Yisa redufa leilach lebeis aviyah. If there was a woman that was always running to her father's house, which is, he was in another city, so she was never with her husband, always going to her father was never home. She was always angry with her husband, never got along. You'll see what the theme over here is, obviously that she's not having tashmish with her husband. But the point is she's either always by her father's house, or they always had problems, or her husband's old or sick, or she was sick, and therefore she cannot accept the difficulty of marital relations, or she was an akara. Akara is a barren woman because of mazel. Meaning to say, she was already married to 3 people and she never gave birth to any of them, so she already has a chazaka that she's akara. Or zakena, she's an elderly woman, she can't have children anymore. Or katana, she's too young to have children. Or va'ilanis. Islanis is similar to an akara, but it's congenital, meaning she was born like that, and there's certain signs that she's not going to be able to have children. She doesn't have any hairs, pubic hairs. She doesn't have a fully developed body. And the word islandess is from the word of like an isle, which is a male animal, which like she has like masculine traits. She's not able to have a child. Or v'she'ena ru'leilit also sounds like the same idea. But Rashi explains what it means she's not fit to have a child because of some type of castrating potion that she drank, which just made her not being able to have any children anymore. That impotence, or meaning it's something that she did. Or if her husband is locked up in jail, so obviously she wasn't with him. Or if she miscarried after her husband passed away. Again, the main idea by all of these, obviously you could tell, is that we're not suspecting over here that she's going to have a child. So in Kulan still Rameir says she still has to wait 3 months in all these cases. So as Rashi points out, obviously it's Rameir who's a yachid. He's the one that makes the gzeira in that case, even though you know for sure that she's not pregnant. All these cases is definitive. And therefore the same would be by an arusa, even though she was only engaged, where you know for sure that she's not pregnant, still doesn't make a difference. Your mayor is the one who disagrees with Rabbi Yasi, and there's a blanket gezerah of 3 months you have to wait after a woman gets widowed. Rabbi Yasi, he's matale artul nasa miyad. He says no, you're allowed to get engaged, and some Yersois take outward nasa. But in this case, he holds you can get engaged and get married right away. Now, so therefore, okay, it's a das yachid that's disagreeing with Rabbi Yasi. But one thing says the Gemara is lamali. Why do you need Rabbi Yechanan to say over here? Halacha is like Rabbi Yasi, but Vamrit, you said meaning Rabbi Yechanan was the one who on the previous daf said these klolim. Rabbi Yasi halacha is Rabbi Yasi. Obviously Rabbi Yechanan never said these klolim. Rather, it was those Amarom who made up on their own, and that's a right. To Misharshia that leslu lahani kloli, because it's not just Rav leslu. It's Rabbi Yechanan who doesn't all of them, because else why would you have to say halacha Rabbi Yasi? The Gemara says no. My kusha, what's the difficulty? Dilma, maybe, even though, yes, Rabbi Yechanan made the klalim, he still would have to paskin over here, because who's the dispute number Rabbi Yasi? It's your mayor who's being stringent. Oh, so maybe Lafukam and Rav Nachman and Shmuel. Maybe he had to exclude from what Shmuel had said. Because Shmuel said, Allah Meir Big Zayraisa, Allah Fazar Meir generally, when he makes a rabbinic decree wherever he's stringent. That's what Rabbi Yechon is coming to exclude from Shmuel, however. In this case, the Allah is going to be like Rabbi Yisi, and therefore there's no right to a Masharsha, because, yes, usually I wouldn't have to tell Allah is like Rabbi Yisi, because when you have Malchik Rabbi Yisi and others, so you're going to say Allah like Rabbi Yisi. But here's Meir Big Zayraisa. And generally we follow Meir Big Zayraisa. We have to say, in this case, Allah is not going to be like Meir Big Zayraisa, and therefore there's no right. So the other says to Gemara, okay, let's bring another right to a Mashash, another time. The following brisa. Again, you're getting into the halacha, and then the main idea is going to be, okay, who we pass and who we really like. But the brisa is like this. A person could go to the fair, to the marketplace, which is on the non-Jewish holidays, the pagan holidays. But like you could purchase from them behema, animals, avodim, and slaves, the shvachis and maidservants, and the reason for that is because you're bringing these living creatures into sanctity by taking them as under Jewish ownership. Also, you could buy from them batim, houses, sadis, and fields, vikram, and vineyards, and the reason is because you're diminishing it from the idol worshippers, or because you're settling the land of Israel by buying these things from a non-Jew. Now, moreover, not only could you buy from them on their pagan holidays, but you could write umala, and you could also bring up the document to verify it into their courts in front of their judges to have it signed and sealed. Now, although it's showing significance to their courts, to their judges, and maybe we have to be concerned that maybe they're going to go ahead and praise their pagan and their deities as if they're great. Even so, it's permitted. Why? It's like saving Yiddish geld from them, because even though you're going to buy it, they're going to contest the sale. So because of that, you're allowed to go ahead and have it verified in their courts. Now, let's say it was a coin. You could even be matam b'chutzlaretz. You could even go generally in Eretz Amim, the non-Jewish lands were concerned that they bury all over the place. A kohen's not allowed to go. He's allowed to go even out of Eretz Yisrael to go and litigate with them regarding the things he purchased from them. And moreover, it's just like he could make himself tummy out of Eretz Yisrael. He could even make himself tummy going to a cemetery. The Gemara jumps in and says, basic first, do you really think to say he go into a cemetery? He's violating a negative prohibition. That's a biblical tumah. How could a kohen go in the cemetery? The Rabbi says the Gemara, but beis pras rabbanan. We mean what's called a beis pras, which is like it means pieces. It's like a cemetery that was plowed over, and there's pieces of bones around the area. That's rabbinic. That's where we say he's allowed to go. So to buy the rabbinic law, he's allowed to go to get his money. Now, and this is actually the main point that we're bringing in for our right. Continues the brisa. Another case where a kohen can make himself tamei. He's allowed to make himself tamei to get married to a woman, and b'lumatar to learn Torah. Where if he has to go learn Torah, and the only way is to become tamei, when you get married, he's allowed to. Now, Rabbi Yehudi says, when do we say this? Only if he doesn't find who to learn from in Eretz Yisrael. But if he finds someone to learn, he's not going to go ahead to go to Chutz La'aretz to go learn Torah from someone else. Rabbi Yosef may disagree. Says no. Even if he finds someone to learn from, Nami Tamei can make himself a Tamei. Why? You can't just learn from everybody. Meaning, you can't learn from every teacher. As Rashi says, you have certain times a Rav that his teaching is very organized, and he teaches very concise, and that's an easier Rebbe to learn from. So although you might have other Rebbeim where you are, but not everyone's merit to learn from everyone, and therefore he holds you'd be able to go and learn from somewhere else. And actually, Rabbi Yisi, he proves this. It says, Ma'aseh b'yesef HaKohen. He went to Chutz La'aretz, even though obviously there was a lot of teachers in Eretz Yisrael, but this Rebbe was able to connect to him, and therefore he's allowed to go ahead and be matan himself. Now, here's the proof. The Amr Rabbi Yechon only says Allah like Rabbi Yisi. Rabbi Yechon said regarding this machlekes, Rabbi Yisi Yehuda, the Allah is like Rabbi Yisi that you can be matan yourself even if you have teachers where you are. Now, Lama Li, why do you need to say this? But Bamar, you said Rabbi Yisi, Allah like Rabbi Yisi. Obviously, we don't hold these klalim because if you did, why would you have to say that? We would know already from your general statements. He rejects. He says, no, Itzach, you would need it. Why? You would have thought to say, Hanemili, when do we say this? Meaning that we have these general statements of Rabbi Yechon Allah is b'masnitin in Mishnayos. Mishnayos are very precise. Yehuda Nasi put it together with precision. The word Bryce actually means what's on the outside. Those were texts that they had gathered, but maybe over there they switched the words Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yisrael, Rabbi Yehuda. Malai, there I would say maybe it's not reliable. Kamash Malam, that's why Rabbi Yehuda said halach is like Rabbi Yisi, But the truth is, we do hold the klal. And if it was a machlekes in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't tell us halachas like a b'yisi, because we know that it's by a price. So maybe you would have thought that the halach is not it's maybe not so precise, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan had to say halachas like a b'yisi. So the Gemara rejected all the rayas that we tried bringing up to qualify Rav Meshash's proof that less lo haniklali. So the Gemara actually revises his statement. Elohachikama. This is what Rav Meshash was saying. Haniklali lav diva komin. All he was saying was that these general statements are not going according to everyone. The Rav, less lehaniklali, as we mentioned before, Rav, and the fact that he concluded, and he told him when he was teaching the Mishnah, he said, and Sayin Banami concluded halach Rabbi Yehuda. Why did he say that? Obviously, he does not hold to the klalim. So that was the point. But you're right, Rabbi Yochanan maybe does hold to the klalim. All the Rabbi Meshash was saying was that obviously there are those who don't hold of the klalim, which is Rav. Now we continue with the halacha, related halacha to the Mishnah that we spoke about, Chetzi Hefker. So now the Gemara introduces a related discussion. I'm Rabbi Mishmol. Chetzi Nachri, an object owned by a non-Jew, ain't kain and shvisa. It does not acquire a Shabbos residence, and rather, whoever takes it, it goes like his tchum. So if let's say this object from the non-Jew came out of the tchum into the city, you're allowed to take it wherever direction you want to, wherever you could go. Because the fact that a non-Jew owns it, he himself doesn't have a shvisa, so his object also don't have a shvisa. Now, this teaching of Shmuel says the Gemara Lama. Who's this going like? In other words, we had a machlekes in our Mishnah regarding chavtzei hefker, regarding a person who's sleeping, which we said regarding chavtzei hefker. Even the Rabbanon, everything is going like Rabbanon subshita, obviously. Hashta chavtzei hefker in our Mishnah, they said regarding an ownerless object. The leslu bailam, which doesn't have an owner, you could say that it would acquire on its own, meaning the object itself maybe acquires a shvisa, and still the Rabbanon say, ein kind of shvisa does not acquire a shvisa. So chavtzei hanachri, an object owned by a non-Jew, the islu bailam. It has an owner, meaning an owner, the thing is like the owner. And the owners don't have a shvisa because they're not Jewish, so they don't have a limitation of a Shabbos residence. So maybe you have to say that you're not going to claim a shvisa, of course. If chavtzei hefka, which maybe you would say it's like parav, so okay, maybe it would require a shvisa. But a Jew is like fleishigs and a nachri is like milachig. It's the opposite extreme. There's no shvisa for a non-Jew. His object for sure is not going to have. Because the chavtzei hefker maybe would say it would require shvisa. So chavtzei hefker is not kind of shvisa according to Rabbanan, for sure chavtzei nachri. So obviously you have to say that Shmuel's halacha was in the pin of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The Kamash Malan, and this is what we're coming to tell you. When did he say that something is going to acquire Shabbos residence? That's if it's an ownerless object. Okay, but the ownerless object itself is going to acquire a shvisa. Why? Because because it doesn't have an owner. So the object itself could be limited for Shabbos residence. But regarding the non-Jew's object, the islu baila, which has an owner, and there it's going to be like the owner. Loi, it's not going to be kind of shvisa. Must be that Shmuel's teaching was in Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So again, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who holds that there is chavtzei hefker kind of shvisa, but obviously even he holds chavtzei nachri is not going to be kind of shvisa. So everyone holds. It would seem the way Shmuel's saying that the object of a non-Jew is not kind of shvisa. On that basis, we ask from the following brayso. He says, someone borrows a bowl, something from a non-Jew on Yom Tov, and he lives in the same city. He knocks on the door on his neighbor Mark. He says, "Hey, can I borrow your bowl?" Or but let's say someone lends something to a non-Jew on Erev Yom Tov. So now, when Shabbos started, it was by the non-Jew who was in the tchum of the city. So, but it's being like the non-Jew. Then the non-Jew gives it back to him on Yom Tov. Or let's say the hakelim ba'oitzos, or vessels, or fruits that were stored away, which is started Shabbos in the tchum. So it has 2,000 amos in every direction, even if it was ownerless. And a vessel which acquired Shabbos by the non-Jew, and it was given back to the owner, and the owner made an erev to the east or to the west, he cannot take it out of the 2,000 amos because it had a Shabbos residence when Shabbos started. Now, let's say a non-Jew brings payers from out of the tchum. He's not moving from its place because again it acquired a shvisa in its place and now it came out of the tchum. So it only has dollar amos. Like anytime we say something comes from out of the tchum, you only get dollar amos. So one thing you see clearly from this brayso is that there is a shvisa even by chavtzei nachri. All these cases were that a non-Jew had it when Shabbos started, and it's going to have a tchum of 2,000 amos. Says the Gemara, if you're going to say Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds chavtzei nachri kind of shvisa that the object owned by a non-Jew acquires a Shabbos residence, so Hamani, who's the town of this brayso that's obviously saying chavtzei nachri kind of shvisa? Oh, okay, it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. In other words, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is going like a previous recorded opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Eliyam, but if you're going to say like we just explained for Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan holds Chavtzei Hanachri and Kain Shvisa, that the object of a non-Jew does not acquire Shabbos residence. So Hamani, who's the town of his brother going like? Lo Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, no one holds Chavtzei Hanachri Kain Shvisa the way we just extrapolated previously to explain what Shmuel was coming to say. So who's his brother like? So the Gemara says you're right. True that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds Chavtzei Hanachri Kain Shvisa. He holds that an object owned by a non-Jew is the same as an ownerless object, which actually does have a Shabbos residence, and that's what the previous price is like. Wait a second. Then Mishmul Da'amad and Shmuel that said previously that Chavtzei Nachri are not kind of Shvisa. So who's he like? That's K'Rabbanan. Like the Rabbanan are in our Mishnah that they say an ownerless object is not kind of Shvisa. And the same thing would apply to an object owned by a non-Jew. Wait a second. But the comment then in this that you had said to ask a question and you said the Rabbanan Pshita, according to Rabbanan, obviously, if an ownerless object which doesn't have any anti-shvisa is not acquiring a shvisa, if it's owned by a non-Jew who the owner itself doesn't have shvisa, do you have to tell me that the Chavtzei Nachri is not going to be acquiring the shvisa? If your whole statement you're saying in the Rabbanan, why would you have to tell me that? Says the Gemara, yes. Now the time, what would you say? Gzeira bailam denachri adabam Yisrael. You're right. Really, intrinsically, there's no reason to tell me. Of course, it's not going to have a shvisa, but it has an owner. And if we're going to let you an object owned by a non-Jew, we might confuse it with an object owned by a Jew, which does have a shvisa. I have to tell you that no, we don't make such a gezerah, and that the Rabbanan would agree that not only do Chavtzei Hefker not kind of shvisa, but also Chavtzei Nachri are not kind of shvisa. Now, but that's one opinion. But then the Gemara brings that actually Rabbi Bar and Rabbi Yochanan, he disagrees with Shmuel. He says Chavtzei Nachri kind of shvisa. He says actually an object owned by a non-Jew acquires a Shabbos residence. He does. He has such a gzeira. And he says even the Rabban would agree, although Chavtzei Hefker they say does not have a shvisa, Chavtzei Nachri would have a shvisa. It would be limited because we would be concerned that it might be confused with that of a Jewish owner. Now the Gemara brings a story related to this halacha that Hani Dichri, they were these rams, the Osul Mavrachta, came to a place called Mavrachta. Sharulahu Rava l'bnei Macheza. Rava permitted to the people of Macheza, which was a city near Mavrachta, within 4,000 amas. They used to make an Erev Tchumen to go from Macheza to Mavrachta on Shabbos. Because it was within the Tchumen, meaning they would make an Erev Tchumen, so it was within 4,000 amas. He permitted the people of Macheza, Lemizvin Minayu, to buy from those non-Jews and to bring those rams back to Macheza on Shabbos. So although the non-Jews had brought it from out of the Tchum, right? So although the non-Jews had brought it from out of the Tchum, but still Rava had held that it's
wasn't it Yom Tov because you need to cook or something, because Shabbos is not something that you do a transaction. You bring.
It could be Yom Tov. It could be Yom Tov too. It could be if he has a problem about
because it's Yom Tov.
Yeah, I mean what? Because of what?
Why would you do it with a Shabbos?
Right? Why would they? Yeah, the Tchum it would be the same thing as Yom Tov also, because you have Tchumen on Yom Tov too. So either way, he went and he let them bring it back to the Macheza. Now, although the Nachri brought him out of the Tchum, Rabbi said it's permitted because Chavtzei Nachri are not kind of shvisa. An object owned by a non-Jew is not kind of shvisa. So good. So who cares if it's brought out of the Tchum?
It says it's Yom Tov.
Yeah. So now Ravina Rava. So Ravina says to Rava, says, "My daitach, what's your opinion? Are you coming from because the Mabrid Mishmul that we had quoted before that says Chavtzei Nachri and kind of shvisa, that the object of a non-Jew is not kind of shvisa? So that's where you're coming from and saying, okay, fine, so you could buy it and then bring it back home. But for Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan, we had two different teachings before. We had Shmuel, and then we had Rabbi Bar and Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan's version that said that Chavtzei Nachri are kind of shvisa, like we said, out to buy on the Yisrael. Halacha Rabbi Yochanan, whenever a machlekes between Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan, really like Rabbi Yochanan. But Rabbi Bar and Rabbi Yochanan says Chavtzei Nachri are kind of shvisa. Gzeir bam nachad bam Yisrael. So why are you saying that they can buy it? So Hadam Rabbi subsequently retracted and he said, you're right. L'zdavnu l'bnei Mavrachta. The only ones that could buy it are the people of Mavrachta, and where the rams are brought from. So although there it's also brought from out of the Tchum, but the difference is the Kul Mavrachta l'ditu, because the whole Mavrachta for them is Kedal Ramas Dami, is like Dal Ramas. If you recall, we had in the Mishnah, enough in Alpha and Beis, we said that the halacha was like Rabbi Gamliel, that if, let's say, non-Jews take you out of your Tchum into another city, or to an enclosed area like a stable or something like that, Rav had said, halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, by Dir Sam Besvina, that you could go ahead and walk the whole area, even though you only get Dalet Amas. So same thing over here. Although these rams are brought from out of the Tchum and they cannot be moved from Dalet Amas, but the whole city is like Dalet Amas and Pila Mavrachta. And therefore they could buy it and take it home. The people from Achayz, although they have an Erev Tchumen, and they could also walk back and forth, but that's obviously more than Dalet Amas. So therefore Rabbi retracted and he says, yes, you're right, you cannot take it out of Dalet Amas, but the whole city is like Dalet Amas. The people from Achayz, however, they cannot go ahead and buy that and take it back home again. Some of these we spoke about in today's Daf and Eruvin Daf Mem Zayin was Rabbi Masharshia. We were continuing from the previous Daf. He says, less Malani Klal. He says, we don't hold to these general rules to say, oh, Rabbi Yisi versus Rabbi Meir, and so on and so forth. So the Gemara kept on rejecting the rayas that we tried bringing. It's not a raya because we had a teaching, and we said Allah is like Rabbi Shimon. Even where he leaves his house in the same city, and it's still not going to make it forbidden on the people of his chatzar. What do you mean Rabbi Yehuda disagrees? And you told me when your machlek is Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Allah is like Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, like we said, because when we said it's like Reb Shimon, of course we're going to say like Reb Shimon. It's only Hechad Lo Yitmer, then Lo Yitmer, then we'll say it's going to be like Reb Yehuda, but that doesn't contradict the Klal. Oh, what's with the fact that we had to say that Allah is like Reb Yehuda, whether it's a pauper or a wealthy person that you can be ma'arv b'raglov, even though Reb Meir is the bar plukta, so why do you have to tell me that Allah is like Reb Yehuda? We always know it's like Reb Yehuda. Obviously you don't hold of the Klal. And we said no, because maybe Rav doesn't hold of the Klal, but maybe Rabbi Yochanan does. And therefore Rav himself had to say that Allah is like Rabbi Yehuda, but you're right, Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't have to tell it's like Rabbi Yehuda because we would know that based on the Klal. Okay, but what's with the fact that even Rabbi Yochanan himself, he had to say that Allah is like Rabbi Yisi regarding all women could get engaged besides the Almana, unlike all the other opinions, but we always rule like Rabbi Yisi. Why did Rabbi Yochanan have to tell us that? No, maybe because he had to exclude from the teaching of Shmuel, which is we generally rule like Rabbi Meir b'gzei reisiv, and that other opinion over there was Rabbi Meir, and if you would have thought that Allah was even like Rabbi Meir, that's why he had to tell me that. But you're right, regularly he would not have to tell you that, it's only over there that he had to tell me that. Well, what's with the fact that he had to tell me Allah is like Rabbi Yisi regarding when you have a kohen, that even if he has a way to learn that he could still make himself tamei, what do you mean, why do you have to tell me Allah is like Rabbi Yisi? We always say Allah is like Rabbi Yisi. No, because I would have thought to say Allah is like Rabbi Yisi is only by Mishnayos. I would have thought maybe by Bryce is not so precise, so therefore it's not a riot. So the Gemara ultimately retracts and says, you're right. This is what Rabbi Shasha was saying. These klolim is not according to everyone. Because Rav, as we mentioned before, he doesn't hold the klolim, but you're right, Rabbi Yochanan could hold the klolim, and we've never had a raya that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold these klolim, but it's just that not that everyone holds the klolim. The other machlek is regarding Cheftzei Nachri, the object of a non-Jew, a kind of shvisa or not. We had Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan, and the machlek is if it's kind of shvisa. So then the Gemara just pointed out that according to the one, meaning according to Shmuel, it says it's not kind of shvisa, you have to say that it's not in Rabbi Yochanan Nuri, that because he holds Chavtzei Hefker are kind of shvisa, so obviously the same thing would be with Chavtzei Nachri, as we learned in the Brisa, that he's the one who holds Chavtzei Nachri, because there is an opinion, he would be the only one. It's only in the Rabbanan. But wait a second, it's in the Rabbanan, isn't that obvious? If they hold Chavtzei Hefker, it's not kind of shvisa. The show Chavtzei Nachri, which the owner doesn't have a shvisa and it goes like its owner, no, it's not pasha. Why? Because what were you thought to say that it's a gzeira? Because you have owners that are non-Jews and owners of a Jew, and you might have confused the two. That's Kamash one. We have to tell you that according to Rabbanan, it's not going to have a shvisa. And then there was Rabbi Yochanan who holds no, it actually is kaina, because actually that's what the Rabbanan hold. They actually are concerned of Baalim Denachi Atam Baalim Yisrael. Then there was a story that Rabbi ultimately retracted to ruler Rabbi Yochanan, that Chavtzei Hefker are kind of shvisa, and that there is going to be a problem with Tchum. It's just only for the people of Mavrachta themselves, that city, that they were allowed to buy, because it's, although you can't move it out of Dalet Amas, but that is like Dalet Amas, the whole city. And therefore they're able to, but people from Mechayz, although they're able to Tchum, and they can go and walk back and forth, but they can't take it out of the Tchum because it came from out of the Tchum. And yes, Chavtzei Nachri, our kind of shvisa, never has a limitation of a Tchum. Thank you to any time for hosting us.